Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Two Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our final review of The Work by Rivers of Nihil. So we've listened to this album non-stop for the past week, and I guess I'll open up our review here by saying it's pretty good. I generally enjoyed it. However, I don't feel like it hit the mark the same way as Where Owls Know My Name did. Now, I'm not saying that as a direct comparison. I'm saying that album was at a certain level, and I really think that album is like masterpiece material, really. This one didn't reach it. But by what magnitude? Well, I do think the general aspect of this album that really grabbed me is like the middle chunk. When you got the two singles, you got The Void, I think The Void of which No Soundscapes, that's a really good one. You got More is in there, Tower 2, and Episode. That chunk is probably my favorite section of the album. So what about the beginning and the end? Well, I feel like the first track, the intro track, The Tower, is a good intro. I like it. But then you have Dreaming Black Clockwork, which we had issues with last week, and I still kind of have an issue with now. Now, when I listen to that song, it's not bad for a while until the end section where they start droning over and over, and then it starts distorting, and it gets really uncomfortably loud. And I think that you can do that, just don't do it as the second song. That just kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth right from the get-go.
I would be careful even saying you could do that, because yeah, they can do it, but to me, stuff like that's almost inexcusable. Nobody wants or likes to hear that.
Honestly, just don't make it as loud. That's all you need to do, and then it's bearable.
What's the point of having it in there at all? What purpose does it serve?
It's a creative decision that kind of marks just a breaking up. You know, you can say, oh, well, it's just noise. It's like, yeah, but it's an interesting noise. And you know what? It can be used creatively, but I don't feel like it was really used that well in this case.
I think if they're using that, I think to me, that's more of a lazy way to do it than a creative way. I feel like there's more creative ways they could have kind of got whatever point they were trying to make without it being aggressively annoying. And it is. It got to the point where I was just skipping that whole song because I knew what was coming. I would just say, fuck it, I don't want to listen to this. The song's mediocre at best, so I didn't feel bad skipping it, but the ending just horrible.
Then after that, you got Wait, which I do like in the sense of it being a kind of almost a 180 from the tone of Dreaming Black Clockwork.
Yep.
I just kind of feel weird that it's like, okay, we're really jumping to a song like this on the third track, and that kind of seems a little weird to me. However, I did make the comparison of this album to I Let It In and It Took Everything by Loathe, which is also an emotional roller coaster going back and forth. So that is kind of cool. I just think it feels weird to have Dreaming Black Clockwork, which kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth at the end, and then a complete jump to something else, which kind of feels a little weird. And then you get into the real meat and potatoes of this album, where you got Focus, Clean, The Void from which no sound escapes, More, Tower 2 Episode, which, like I said, is probably the best chunk of this album. Like, that's the general highlight, is that chunk of songs there, for me.
Yeah, so like TV Fish said, generally I enjoyed the album too throughout the week. I didn't have any huge gripes with it other than Dreaming Black Clockwork that we just talked about. But I didn't really fall in love with it. I mean, yeah, you know, we're gonna make comparisons to Owl. Not really a comparison like you said, but you listen to one album, you go, wow, this is amazing, I love this. Then you listen to another album, you go, whatever. I mean, is that really a comparison? We're just stating basically a thought about it.
The issue is that the bar is set really high from the last record.
Right. But even if it wasn't, I mean, this album still, as it stands alone, and if you even had nothing to compare it to, it is what it is. The singles, Focus and Clean, I say Clean grew on me and Focus did the opposite. So I liked both singles at the beginning, but Focus started to kind of get not annoying to me, but I liked it less and less throughout the week. Whereas Clean, I started liking more and more. My favorite part of that song is literally the beginning when the first verse breaks in. Just to love how it just kind of kicks off all of a sudden with the vocals. But the song's got a good flow. It's rhythmically entertaining. It's it's got some good grooves in there and all that kind of stuff. It's really good. But my favorite section of the album is Episode and Maybe One Day. So this is a set of songs that originally I thought they were like paired together in some way, because one song sounds very low, depressed you might say, and the other song sounds very happy and very uplifting, at least sonically. Then you take a look at the lyrics, which I did, and Episode seems to be about a person who's basically kind of at their wits' end. They're going through episodes. They don't know how to make ends meet. They don't like their job. All these things. They kind of blame God for it. It's almost like they believe in God but defy Him anyway. They cast doubt on God's righteousness, which is all interesting stuff. So it's a pretty low song. It's pretty deep, kind of depressing kind of song. Very that kind of mood. Then you get One More Day, and I'm expecting to read the lyrics and think,
Maybe
okay, this is going to be, Maybe One Day. I'm expecting the lyrics to be more uplifting, like, the positive side of Episode. But it's really not. It's another depressing song. Interpretively, I got it's either about a relationship that one person wants to end and the other person doesn't, or it's about a job, somebody wants to quit their job. Obviously, lyrics are interpretive, so I'm not really sure exactly what it means, but this is what I was getting from it. It could also be a person who's schizophrenic and has dueling personalities. It could be a lyrical back and forth between somebody who's depressed versus somebody who's optimistic, or there's a lot of different ways you can take it, but at the end of the day, it's still pretty dark in subject matter, which is a weird dichotomy because you got the music, which is very uplifting sounding. It's very sonically, it's very bright. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's definitely not major scale. It's definitely still in the minor scale, I think.
Hear it again.
I listened to it a few times, and I'm not the best at that, but I'm pretty sure it's still in the minor scale. But it's like it's got this very bright sound to it, kind of almost alluding to major scale a little bit. But either way, I was kind of thrown off a little bit because I completely thought the lyrics were going to be more happy. Yeah, but it wasn't. But that was still my favorite chunk of the album. The fact that you had this kind of gloomy song, then you had this more sounding bright song, but even though they're still both dark, they're still cool. Great solos on both these songs. Really like that. There's some pretty good guitar work throughout the album, but on those two songs specifically, they shone. Sounds good.
What did you think of the last track, Terrestrial 4 Work?
So, it grew on me a bit. I did give it a few good listens. It's still a little too proggy for my liking, for me to love the song. It's got a little bit too much going. It's a little bit too all over the place. I don't know. There's stuff about it that I like. I can't quite put my finger on it. I didn't hate the song. When I listened to it, I was always like, yeah, this is pretty good, but what about it do I really like? I don't really know.
Well, my thoughts on that song is that I feel like it's not the best climax to this album because it's 11 minutes long.
Yeah.
So you would think that this is the big ending, but honestly, I kind of felt like the true climax of this album was Episode. Maybe One Day, I kind of started to mentally clock out at that point. I felt like when Episode happened, that was kind of just the it of this album, and then Maybe One Day I'm like, okay, this is fine. Terrestrial 4 comes on, and I'm like, nothing really about this feels like it's usurping the power that Episode had.
Yeah.
So I feel like as an end section to the album, it feels a little weak in comparison to what the album kind of already presents, which is why I say this middle chunk is kind of the highlight of it, where the beginning has kind of an issue there, and the end kind of just doesn't feel like it really caps off the album super well. Not to say it's bad, but I feel like Terrestrial 4 was maybe a tad bit anticlimactic, but it's still a good song. Don't get me wrong, it's still enjoyable, it's good, I like it.
Yeah.
I just feel like Episode is the climax of this album, really.
Yeah. And there's a couple songs on this album that kind of do stand out, and for almost opposite reasons. So Maybe One Day is definitely a song that stands out. Like I said, it's got that bright sound, all that blah, 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 blah. Another song that stands out, though, is track number 7, More. The reason why this song stands out is kind of the opposite reason. maybe not the opposite, but a completely different reason. But it's basically the song that's the most in your face, like the most aggressive, the most punchy. And not a lot of the other songs are really like that. You might get sections here and there, but this song really kind of jumps at you. It's got some really good drum work, really good guitar work. I think that's another really good song.
Well, I guess with that, how about we rate it?
Sure. So this is a pretty fine piece of work, no pun intended, because it's called The Work. But it really does miss a lot of the good stuff that I really want. I'm going to give it a 6. I think that's a respectable score. I wish, obviously, it was a little better than that, but that's what I give it.
Well, I think this is a pretty strong album, all things considered, and there is a good majority of the album that I do think is quite enjoyable. However, I don't think that it reaches the same level as Where Owls Know My Name in terms of just general enjoyment. And I feel like the fact that kind of there's some aspects of it that kind of bog me down a little bit prevent it from getting a toe tag, but I still think it's pretty strong despite some of the flaws, so I'm going to give it a 6.5. So,
cool.
Pretty good score, 6.5, it's still a pretty good album, and we would love to hear your guys' opinions on it, so comment in the comments below, tell us what did you think of the work a week after its release, and that's all we got for you guys today. So remember to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
I'm Bottle Cell.
And keep those horns up.